This is the lecture video for Jennifer Nagel's Introduction to Knowledge. I want to begin by noting a few observations that Nagel makes at the beginning of this article. One observation is that websites that look trustworthy can be biased. Another observation, world-renowned experts can follow misleading evidence down the wrong track. A third observation, this one's at the individual level, illusions can distort what we seem to see or remember. It's not hard to think of examples where each of these observations gets borne out. For instance, we could think back to the COVID-19 pandemic when world-renowned experts did make mistakes. That's not the only example, but of course it's one of the more recent global examples where mistakes were made by experts. Now, of course, the mere fact that experts sometimes make mistakes doesn't mean that it's rational or reasonable to discount what they say or to not trust them. After all, their track record seems to be a lot better than our own as non-experts. In any case, we have some puzzles that get generated by these observations. Puzzles about what knowledge is and how we can know anything at all. For example, what's the difference between just thinking that something's true and then actually knowing that it's true? There's a puzzle there to be solved. The branch of philosophy that deals with questions about knowledge, what it is, and how we can know anything is called epistemology. So this article by Nagel is just an introduction into what epistemology is all about. All right, Nagel makes a few interesting claims about knowledge. First, she says that knowledge depends on knowers. What she means by that is that without people around to know things, there might still be information, but there wouldn't be any knowledge. So in this way, knowledge is not like gold or like water. It depends on subjects who know or people who know. Right? Now, maybe there don't have to be any humans around. Maybe there could still be animals that know things, even if all the humans were to disappear. Maybe there are aliens in other parts of the galaxy that could still know things. At any rate, the point stands. Knowledge depends on knowers. That's Nagel's first interesting claim about knowledge. Another interesting claim that she makes about knowledge is that not every fact is an item of knowledge, but all items of knowledge are, of course, facts. What she means by that is something has to be true in order for it to count as an item of knowledge. In other words, if we think back to, say, 3,000 years ago, when most people on Earth believed that Earth was flat, the claim Earth is flat could not have been an item of knowledge, even for those people, despite the fact that it was widely believed or accepted. So something needs to be a fact in order to count as knowledge. People 3,000 years ago might have thought that they knew Earth was flat, but they didn't really know it, because what they claimed to know was not a fact. And then, of course, not every fact is an item of knowledge. What that means is that there are some things that are factual that are just not known. This point should be obvious to anyone thinking about what knowledge is. The possibility of discovering a fact or a truth, really coming to know it for the first time, depends on there being some facts that aren't yet known. Hence her idea that not every fact is an item of knowledge. So her initial conclusion, and this is in the second section of the paper, is that knowledge must be a link between a person and a fact. So in the third section, she's going to end up offering a theory about what knowledge is that she calls the cynical theory. Now, she's going to reject this theory, but what is it? So the cynical theory says that whether an opinion or a belief counts as knowledge depends on a person's social status. So we might say that a medical expert can know information about medicine, whereas ordinary or lay people maybe can't. Or an expert in some other field, you can pick your favorite field, might have knowledge about their field given their status, but people who aren't experts in that field can't have knowledge. Or maybe we say it's some other kind of social status. For instance, someone who's viewed to be the most wise person in society. If they believe it, then it counts as knowledge. That's the cynical theory. Nagel has a few important objections to the cynical theory that are worth taking seriously, and they seem to refute the cynical theory. All right, first objection that she raises. Experts widely thought to have known something in the past have later been proven wrong. The example that we were thinking about just a few minutes ago was the COVID-19 era, where medical experts sometimes got certain things wrong. Right? But that's true of experts in every field. They sometimes get things wrong. Right? Now, if every item of knowledge has to be a fact, and experts sometimes make mistakes, then of course you can't get knowledge simply by having an item be believed by someone who counts as an expert or who has the relevant social status. The next objection that Nagel considers is that we often describe ordinary non-expert people as knowing things. You don't have to have any kind of respectable social status at all in order to count as knowing certain basic things. Maybe you're not an expert in anything and your social status is very poor, but you could still know what your name is, or that you're currently in the state of Texas, for example. Hence, the cynical theory must be false. So if the cynical theory is false and knowledge isn't explained in terms of social status, what is it? In the fourth section, Nagel considers what this difference is between knowing something is true and then merely thinking that it's true. So consider the following two sentences. Jill knows that her door is locked. That's the first sentence. Second one. Bill thinks that his door is locked. We register a difference between these two sentences. What explains the difference? Nagel says that one factor is what she calls the factivity of the knowledge sentence. And all this means is that if the knowledge sentence is true, then what Jill claims to know must itself be true, must be a fact. So her door must really be locked. Whereas the sentence about Bill could be true even if the door isn't locked. Right? Even if the door is unlocked, it could still be true that Bill thinks that his door is locked. So there's a difference between knowing something and merely thinking that it's true. And what Nagel is saying here is that knowledge sentences are factive in the sense that the item of knowledge must be true. Now, you could think that you know something. It could seem to you that you know something when you don't really. So there's a difference not only between knowing that something is true and thinking that something is true. There's also a difference between knowing that something is true and then thinking you know something is true. Or it's seeming to you that you know something is true. You just might be wrong. In addition to an item of knowledge being true, there are other requirements or constraints on what knowledge is. According to Nagel, she says, confidence is another requirement on knowledge, and also being confident for the right reasons. So if Bill isn't entirely sure that his door is locked, then he doesn't really know that it's locked. And if his confidence in what he claims to know isn't based on any reasons at all, it might just be a hunch that he has, then he also can't know. Here Nagel gives an example where we suppose that Bill has a belief about his daughter not having committed a crime. Suppose she's been taken to court and they're trying to sort out whether or not she committed the crime. He's confident that she didn't commit the crime, But he's not confident based on any evidence. He's confident based on his emotional connection to his daughter. It's the emotion that generates his level of confidence. Well, if that's what's going on, then he doesn't really know that she is innocent because he doesn't have any evidence or any good reasons. He's not confident for the right reasons. So we can say that where Nagel leaves things is she thinks that what knowledge amounts to then is three different conditions. One, the item of knowledge must be true or a fact. Two, the knower must be confident in what they claim to know. And then three, they must be confident for the right reasons. And those three conditions explain what knowledge is. Nagel concludes the paper by offering some remarks about what truth is. So she says that there's a difference between what we can call objective truth, or capital T truth, and then relative truth, where she's going to ultimately end up saying that the concept of relative truth ends up resulting in a contradiction. Right? So objective truth is truth that does not depend on what anyone thinks or how anyone feels. Something is objectively true just in case it's true. It's the way reality is. Relative truth is a kind of truth that's relative to a subject. So something can be true for me, but not true for you. And what this means is that things might appear to you to be a certain way, but they appear to me to be a different way. And according to the thesis of relativism about truth, if things appear to you to be a certain way, then they really are that way for you. Whereas if they appear totally different to me, then they really are that totally different way from me. Now, Nagel thinks this is a contradictory idea, this idea of relative truth. It ends up being a self-refuting view to be a relativist about truth. Why does she think this? Well, she says, consider the following sentence. Truth is always relative to a subject. Now let's ask ourselves, according to relativism, what should we think about that sentence? Well, if it seems false to you, then it is false for you. And if it seems true to you, then it is true for you. What that means is that relativism can't be capital T true or objectively true for everyone. It can't capture what's going on for all of us all of the time if people have different beliefs or opinions about relativism about truth. Right? So it seems to be self-refuting in that way.